Dr. Mansour, what are you thinking? I mean, I think we were supposed to have like 26 people had confirmed. We're at 22.
Yeah,
so
I
I'm
think
thinking
we
for
should.
time, let's get started, right?
I would say exactly. Let's just go ahead and get started.
Okay, sounds good.
I just want to say one word before we start, Lizette, if you don't mind.
Yep.
Thank you so much, everyone. I know this is it's a huge thing to get all of you together on a call. As you're all aware, we're here to discuss common data elements for penetrating brain injury, and Lizette is going to be leading this conversation. This is just the first meeting, and really will discuss the big vision. Interestingly, this is happening at the same time as we are revisiting the common data elements for TBI. So hopefully those two things can be complementary. Just want to say thank you so much, all of you, and looking forward to working with each and every one of you. Lizette, please go ahead.
Yeah, so thank you, Dr. Mansour. And like he said, my name is Lizette Villarreal. I'm a program manager here at the Coalition for National Trauma Research. We go by CENTER, so I hear that acronym a lot. We are kicking off this PBI work group orientation, and definitely wanted to start off by just thanking each of you. We had such a positive response when we sent out the invites to participate in this work group. Everybody was just so gracious to be able to join us and willingness to work on this project. So thank you for that. Okay, so we are recording this meeting. So anybody, and we'll record all meetings from here moving forth. And so if there's anyone, if you ever miss a meeting, don't worry about it. I will send out recordings after the meeting, and also I can always jump on a call with anybody to discuss any part of a meeting. So for today, we have a jam-packed agenda. We want to do some introductions. I definitely want to get everybody familiar with each other. I know many of you know each other, but for those that don't, we'll do some brief introductions, and then Dr. Mansour will provide a brief project background on like the main project as a whole. Then we will also focus on our specific aim and what this CDE Common Data Elements work group will be working on. We'll go through some of the objectives of the group and how the workflow is going to work for this project. And then, I've already kind of briefed everyone on Sunday night. I sent out a reference study list to kind of get our minds going and get things swirling, which worked because I've gotten a ton of responses from then to now on additional studies that people have ideas to include. We'll then follow up with looking at our project timeline and what the next 6 to 8 months is going to look like for this work group, and then looking at next steps, and finally look at standing meetings. We want to have monthly meetings for this work group, and we will try to work on a time that works best for everyone. I know everyone's schedules are so complex, and so we'll do our best, but again, we're recording all meetings moving forward. Okay, so we'll provide just some brief introductions. Dr. Mansour, you want to get us going?
Yeah, my name is Ali Mansour. I'm a neurointensivist at the University of Chicago, and yeah, know most of the people here. So.
Dr. Rao?
Yeah, hi. My name is Susan Rao. I am a trauma surgeon at the University of Chicago, and I know a lot of the people here, but not everybody. One of the PIs on this project.
Dr. Doss is in surgery, so she's going to be unable to join us. Dr. Goldenberg, is he on?
Hi, everyone. Fernando Goldenberg, Neurocritical Care, University of Chicago. Thank you so much for attending.
Dr. Armanda, is he on? Okay. Dr. Bajatia?
Yes, it's Bajadia, Neeraj Bajadia, neurointensivist at University of Maryland Shock Trauma.
Dr. Bell?
Hi, everybody. Randy Bell. I'm a neurosurgeon. I'm currently in Sioux Falls, South Dakota.
Dr. Chang?
I'm Dr. Chang, a neurointensivist at Washington, D.C. I'm a colleague of Dr. Armando's.
Dr. Dingler? Dr. Feldbaum?
Hi, dual trained neurosurgeon at Washington Hospital Center with Dr. Armando and Dr. Chang.
Brian Ferner?
Hi, I'm Brian Ferner. I work for Data for the Common Good at the University of Chicago.
Dr. Geiger?
I don't think she's on.
Yeah, I don't see her. Dr. Gurney, is she on? Okay, she's going to join in. Dr. Harlett?
Yeah, Greg Harlett, neurosurgeon at the Cleveland Clinic, and I'm with the Brain Trauma Foundation.
Okay. Dr. Holcomb is out as well. Dr. Kashout.
Tara Kashout, neuroendovascular surgery at the University of Chicago.
Dr. O'Phelan. Okay, Dr. Papa.
Hey,
No,
Christy,
Christy,
you're muted, Christy.
Oh, sorry.
Christy, you're still muted.
She's
Christy, you're still muted, Christy. We can't hear you.
Yep, still muted.
Christy's a neurosensitist at the University of Miami.
Yeah, she might be having audio issues. Okay.
Yeah.
Dr. Papa.
Hi, Linda Papa, Emergency Medicine at Orlando Regional Medical Center.
Welcome. Dr. Pasternak Wise.
Hi, I'm Olga. I'm one of the neuroradiologists at University of Chicago.
Welcome. Dr. Rosenthal.
Guy Rosenthal, I'm a neurosurgeon at Hadassah in Jerusalem in Israel.
Dr. Rubiano.
Hi, hello. Andres Rubiano from Colombia, neurosurgeon.
Dr. Circle.
I'm neurosurgeon and chief of Department Cerebral Neurosurgical, Mechnikov Hospital, Dnipro, Ukraine.
Welcome. Dr. Steins in surgery. Dr. Umo.
Brain Injury Program Director at NIH.
Welcome. Dr. Valatka.
Alex Vlatka, neurosurgeon at University of Texas, Southwestern Medical Center, and Parkland Hospital in Dallas.
Dr. Vedetta.
Walter Vedetta, Neurocritical Care, University of Buenos Aires, Argentina.
Michael Watkins. Okay, he's not on. Dr. Wintermark.
I think he's on a plane.
Okay. And then Dr. Wright.
David Wright, Emergency Medicine, Emory University.
Okay. And then we do have some program staff on. Michelle, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Michelle Price. I'm the Executive Director of the Coalition for National Trauma Research.
Monica.
Monica Phillips, I work for Center as a program manager.
And then from the University of Chicago team, Hugh.
Hi, everyone. Hugh Flynn. I'm the project manager for the larger MTEC grant that this work is a part of.
And I think the only other one I have is Jordan Furman. Is he on?
Yeah, Jordan.
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, okay.
I'm a research scientist at UChicago in Mary Ellen Geiger's lab.
Okay, perfect. Did I miss anybody?
No, Dr. Dengler just put a message in the chat. He's multitasking, but he's here.
Okay, perfect. We have great attendance, so thank you again, everybody, for joining in on this call. Okay, let's get going here. So just a brief project overview. Dr. Munster, you want to talk about the main project?
Sure. So really quickly, this effort is supported by a grant from the Department of Defense through MTEC. And this particular part of the project, which is the CDEs, falls within the greater scope of the project. The project really is a project that has two sort of big aims. One of them is to develop a neurotrauma training program that helps incorporating neurosurgical and neurocritical care training for embedded partners, military partners, trauma surgeons at the University of Chicago, and hopefully expand that to other institutions in the future. And in leveraging the unique experience University of Chicago has with penetrating brain injury, we wanted to also, one, develop the common data elements for penetrating brain injury to complement the common data elements for traumatic brain injury in general, and two, start prospective data collection, data repository, data commons essentially for penetrating brain injury with data for common good and MIDRIC, where we would identify 3 sites in addition to the University of Chicago and collect prospectively clinical, imaging, and biomarker data, as well as analyze them. This is really the big picture, sort of super big picture for this project. What we are doing here together specifically is focusing on the common data elements for penetrating brain injury and hopefully identifying those by the end of this work group's meetings.
Thank you. So looking at what the major task for specifically for 2.3, which is where this part of the project fits in, our goal here is to first of all start by forming a subject matter expert panel, which we've already done. We will then collaborate with NINS for guidance and endorsement of the common data elements. We will conduct a Delphi survey with 3 rounds, and we'll discuss this a little bit further. We're going to look at populating data and quality monitoring, and then lastly, draft and refine the common data elements to be used for case report forms. And so the major task of this work group is obviously to employ a consensus-driven approach to identify common data elements for penetrating brain injury. So how is this going to work into FITBR and what we call NTRR, which is the National Trauma Research Repository? And so these PBI data elements will be integrated into both systems. PBI will be made available through the Federal Interagency Traumatic Brain Injury Research Informatics System, which is commonly known as FITBR. Everybody knows about that. And then this FITBR is on the same platform as the National Trauma Research Repository. And so the PBI data elements will fit in nicely into both. NTRR is the central warehouse for trauma clinical research data. And then everyone knows FITBR implements the common data elements specific for traumatic brain injury research. And so all these systems will be tied in together. The idea is that, we have created the BRIC system was created by FITBR, and so this is now where we host the NTRR. We've been doing the NTRR project, the revamp for about 2 years now, and the idea is that by putting these on the same systems, that users can then pull across both repositories. And so that's the ultimate goal, is to be able to, now that both structures are aligned, that you can pull studies across both with common data elements that are consistent across both platforms. So again, the number one thing we're doing here as a work group is to identify the common data elements for penetrating brain injury, specific to penetrating brain injury. We're going to clean and harmonize study data with established and new PBI common data elements. And so that's the first step in really, gathering the studies that, studies that we know currently exist and what data elements they use in those studies to be able to start this process. We want to then establish a process for submission of new PBI studies for the future. And then finally, establishing a process for using the PBI data that we ultimately put into the repository. And Dr. Mansour, feel free to chime in if there's anything that you'd like to add onto these. So just to kind of get our brains aligned into the terminology of what we mean when we say CDEs or basic CDEs versus core. So CDE obviously refers to a common data element. There's 2 types. There's a core common data element and there's a basic common data element. Both FITBR and the NTRR have their own set of core CDEs. And so core CDEs is a common element, common data element that collects essential information that's applicable to all studies and it's required to be collected. So the National Trauma Research Repository, I'll show those next, and those, there's a set of core elements, and then FITBR has its own set of core that are separate. Very similar, but they are separate. There's some uniqueness in both. And then what this group is going to be doing is we are going to be looking for common data elements that we feel as a group, as a work group, are essential information to be collected for all PBI specific studies. And then we will make those recommendations to the PI team, and that's what we would like to then be uploaded into the repositories for use by investigators across the country. And just as a note, we know that, as we look at the core and the basic CDEs, there are going to be many, many unique or supplemental data elements. We're trying to determine, of all PBI studies, these are the elements that we would like to see across the board on every study. But then we know that, every study is going to have their own unique or supplemental data elements that they're going to have to include. And those type of elements are not what we're considering. These are we just want to know what basic common data elements do we want across all PBI studies. So just to give you a little bit of a, kind of get into this rhythm here. So this is the list of the core common data elements that were adopted for the National Trauma Research Repository. So we have, the data elements of age, ethnicity, race, gender type, and then these are the definitions that the NTRR adopted. And we know that there are multiple definitions for a lot of these data elements, but these are the ones that were adopted specific for the NTRR. So I'll let you take a look at those. And then the permissible value that's associated with each of those elements and how that is defined. And so essentially our work group will be looking at, the basic CDEs, and we will categorize it the same way. So we'll have our data elements, then we will come up with a definition that we feel, is the best definition to represent that element, along with what permissible value is going to be assigned to that element.
Our questions are answered.
Okay. Somebody have a question?
I'm sorry. Again.
Okay, so looking at the PBI work group, our task number 1 is to identify the work group members and work group leader. And so, we identified the 29 people that will serve on the work group. Everybody brings a different specialty into the project.
Dr. Das, you have a hot mic.
Yeah, give me 1 second. I'm gonna try to.
I don't know if anybody can mute him. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so Dr. Mansour will serve as our work group leader, and then what's unique about this work group is that we also have 4 MD PI team that they will then review all the CDEs to ensure that that's what we want to make as our final recommendation. Our task 2 will be, we want to recommend studies to be analyzed for data elements. Like I mentioned at the beginning, I sent out a list on Sunday night with, it was about 120 some studies that had been recommended, mostly by Dr. Mansour, that he had been collecting over the years. And so I sent that out to the work group. And then what we want to do now is, everybody take a look at those studies and let us know, is there others that are missing? I've gotten quite a bit from members already, but that's our next task, is look at that list and see if there's any studies that you feel we should be looking into to look at data elements that they use to consider. Dr. Wright, you have a question?
I don't recall getting an email about that. Was it sent through a listserv or something that might have ended up in junk?
It should have come directly from me, but I can resend it to you right after.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Lizette?
Yes.
Could you clarify, so when we're talking about the core elements, like brain injury in general, so the overlap with just, blunt brain injury, and how this will be developed in in addition to that, or are they overlapping? Can you just clarify that? Because that would change the study focus.
Yeah, so we will look at the core for both the NTRR and FitBear as this team. So we'll look at the core and see which of those cores we want to overlap and make the core for PBI. But then for this specific work group, we're going to be looking at the basic common data elements. Okay, so not so much the cores, but the basic. And so what I'll do is after we start collecting, after we get the studies and we're looking for like the frequency of the data elements, you'll see the data elements that rise to the top are more than likely going to become the core. I mean, those are going to be like the age and gender that mostly all studies have. And so I will share that with the PI team before
I do want to add
we launch this.
Is that since the TBI CDEs are currently being revised, it would be important for us to try to, as much as possible, make sure that things are homogeneous so that we could potentially, one, not necessarily revisit certain core CDEs that are already existent in the general TBI CDEs. And excuse me for using the word general TBI, and I just refer to the current CDE version of TBI as general, and focus on adding things that would differentiate or are specific for penetrating brain injury that would ideally complement the other.
Yes.
And I think Ncini's input on that would be very important. We just want them to be homogeneous and not necessarily create something different than what currently exists for common variables.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And, it's important to put in what PBI specific CDEs that are not currently available, which ones can be integrated. So yeah.
Yeah, good point. So our task two, I will go ahead and send that email to Dr. Wright, but if anybody else did not get it, let me know. But it's a comprehensive list, Excel sheet of about 126 studies that I've been analyzing to look at the frequency of data elements in those studies. And then I'll give everybody about a couple more weeks to send me anything that, any studies we might have missed, which I've gotten quite a bit that have been really good. And so I've added those data elements in there as well. And so that's our next thing. And then our task three will be, once we have the list of data elements, then we will start putting them through a Delphi process. And we'll use a Delphi process, Delphi survey. There'll be 3 rounds. That is when this work group will review the data elements collected from these sources and arrive at consensus on those PBI data elements to include in the repository. Okay, and we will have, this is just, obviously this is just our orientation. So I will have another meeting next month where I talk specifically about how the Delphi survey works. It's very simple. It's easy for people to navigate, and it doesn't take long at all. And so I will train everybody on what that Delphi looks like. Okay, and then task 4 will be for us to review the commonality of data elements collected in the studies, and then determine the basic data elements for PBI, determining permissible values, definitions, that will all be within the Delphi survey. And then lastly, once we make the selection of the data elements, we will then develop a white paper of the recommended basic CDs. This is just a little easier visual to see. I like to just kind of break it down so everybody can kind of see what steps are next. Like I said, we're doing the data source review now. We're currently analyzing the frequency of data elements. We don't have the frequency completed yet, especially as we're getting more and more studies from our work group members. But within the next few weeks, you will get an Excel sheet that has all the data elements listed, along with the frequency of how often those data elements appeared within the studies that were recommended for review. We will then follow an order of precedence looking at FitBur. Primarily, we want to make sure that if there is a data element that's already in FitBur, that we're using the same definition and permissible value if possible. And if it's not, then we'll go to kind of the next order of precedence amongst other repositories. Completing the Delphi survey. Again, the Delphi survey will be 3 rounds, and that's where each of you will select the elements, the definitions for inclusion. And it also gives everyone the opportunity, there might be elements that we didn't see often enough within the studies, but that some of you feel like you feel strongly about including or recommending to be included. And there's an opportunity in the Delphi in the first rounds to make those recommendations. Have we considered using this data element? Like, let's think about that. And so there's like a free text area to be able to add data elements. The idea is that we would, the group would have to reach 80% agreement to be able to meet inclusion criteria. And then lastly, submitting the recommendation to the University of Chicago PI team that will then look at all the data elements and make the final recommendation for the repository. So to date, we have 29 work group members. So our work group is set. The leadership team at U Chicago recommended data scientists and specialists in all these areas. So thank you everyone for your willingness to participate, and we feel like we have a really good multidisciplinary core that will be able to help us guide this process. I will be the center support staff on this work, and so feel free to call, text, email me if you have any questions along the way. I'll be your point of contact. Looking at the reference studies and data element sources, we are first reviewing the FitBur data dictionary and determining which data elements apply to PBI. So that's the first step that I did. And then now we've kind of moved on to looking at these 126 studies and reviewing the data elements. As I've gotten studies, I know Dr. Circo sent me some yesterday. I went through some of those studies and added those data elements in there, and then we just update the frequencies. And I will do that for any remaining studies that are sent to me in the next couple of weeks. And so I do ask that, if you have any studies that are not in the Excel sheet currently, and I'll update it with the ones that that I just received in the past few days when I send out the meeting minutes. I'll update that list and resend it out. If there's one that's missing, just feel free to email me and I'll get that added on.
Lizette, sorry, I have a quick question.
No, go ahead.
Are you also going to be looking at the NINDS data dictionary for TBI? Okay, I see you nodding.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Okay,
I have that on our list already. You'll see that next.
awesome.
So this is just an example of what you'll see, and so you'll see the data element along with the frequency, and the frequency will tell you how many times that data element appeared in the study. And so obviously if there happened to be a study that was in 100, you'll see the frequency at 100, and it'll be ranked out so that you can see the ones that kind of rise to the top. And you'll get that in about the next 3 weeks or so. Okay. Here's, this is what we're talking about here. And so the order of precedence for definition of permissible values, like we mentioned, if there is a data element that's already in FITBR, we do want to defer to that definition. It just makes it easier, and we want to harmonize the data across these repositories. So we're looking for the data definition under the FITBR platform first. Then we're moving to NINDS and other BRICS instances to look at definitions. Then, of course, if we can't find it, because there will be times where, if there happens to be a data element that's not appearing in either one, we do have other repositories that we're looking at. So NCDB, TQIP, also NIH or the National Library of Medicine repository. And then finally, there is a cancer repository that we've used on some of our other trauma work that we'll be looking at. But most of the times we are able to find the definition. Now, I will say that, when we get to the point of the Delphi survey, if there's a definition that we put in there, obviously people are ranking, which definition they feel is best. There are opportunities in there to say, I like this definition, and we'll bring it back for discussion. We like this definition, but we really feel like it's missing this component or that component. And we do have the ability to make some adjustments to a definition if the group feels that's needed.
Lizette, I have a question for the group, and I might be confused, but I was under the impression that FITBR common data elements and NINDS common data elements for TBI are, if anything, FITBR uses the NINDS common data elements for TBI. If that is not correct, then the question is, should we be prioritizing FITBR or the NINDS common data elements?
So my suggestion would be to prioritize NINDS CDEs.
Yeah.
Especially because now as you know, there's the new, we're looking at revisions for the current CDEs and so forth. So that's going to be the most up-to-date information.
Yeah. So I would suggest then that we reverse 1 and 2.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll do that. And what you'll see, I see your hand up, Brian, but let me say this one thing before I forget. So what you will see is when we find a data element that's in both, you will see both definitions come up on the Delphi survey. So then we know that as a group, we would want to prefer take precedence over NINDS and then looking at FITBR, but it at least allows our team to look at, maybe there is a part of the definition in FITBR that we would like to be added to the NINDS one. And so it gives you the option to look at both and how those match up. Brian, you have a question?
Yeah, so if you find a CDE that the data element is more or less capturing the same content, but the list of permissible values isn't exactly what you would want, how do you go about? Do you create a separate CDE that has different permissible values? Like, what is the process for?
I'm hoping that with us having an NINDS representation and CNEs buy-in specifically, that we could then ask to add the permissible values to the current CDEs. Now, the only limitation to what we're doing right now is that these efforts are happening in parallel, right? Mm-hmm. So there is going to be, in the most ideal world, we would have just finished the TBI CDEs and we use those to inform what we are doing right now. I think the TBI CDE effort is going to finish sooner than this effort. And so Hopefully, we will be able to have or inform some of our final sort of, before we have the white paper, our final CDEs. But the alternative or the way to go about this is when we do identify something that is significantly different. As I said, in addition to having multiple people on this call that are actually sitting currently in different subsections of the TBI CDEs, we should probably go back and forth in communication with the chairs of the TBI CDEs and make sure that we are not producing confusion, right? What we don't want to happen is to end up in a place where, again, those two things don't like seamlessly sort of integrate.
Good point. Okay, so now looking at, what the timeline is going to be over the next few months. We will hold monthly virtual meetings with this work group for the next 6 to 8 months to get this work completed. Of course, today we launched this work group, by June. So next month, we have all our recommended studies that we want to look at for inclusion of data elements, and then all the data sources will be analyzed for those elements. And then we are looking to launch the first round of the Delphi survey in July of this year. And so the way that works is that we launched round 1 of the Delphi survey. The survey is open for about 3 weeks, and then we have 1 week to analyze, and anything that meant inclusion or exclusion, we take those out, and then you go on to the next round. There will be 3 rounds. Now, in between each round, we will have one of our monthly meetings where I will then present what elements have met inclusion, and we'll be able to review things and look at the definitions that we think were recommended or that rose to the top. And so it kind of works in parallel, and you're working round by round as we go. There'll be 3 rounds, and then at the end, we'll have our clean set, and then the goal is that by January of 2026, we will have our white paper to the University of Chicago team to be able to look at and recommend the basic CDEs. Any questions on that? Michelle?
I just wanted to add, it's not shown on this here, but we also, with other work groups that we've done, we have a final step, which is we submit this for publication to the appropriate neurotrauma journal with everyone in this group as part of the corporate authorship.
Good point, Michelle. I'll add that in. Brian?
Yeah, there was mention also of producing sort of case report forms as part of this. I take it that happens clearly after the January 2026 point. Is that correct?
Yeah, and it could happen, depending on how quickly we go through the rounds, it could happen closer to the end of the year, because we will work on the white paper, that once we're working on the white paper, we already have the list of data elements set. So we'll work in parallel when we get to that point.
Perfect, thank you.
Lizette, I have a question about that. And Brian, are you talking about form structures in the repository, or are you talking about CRFs for the study?
I'm talking about CRFs for the study, particularly.
Okay. I don't believe that work is part of this work group.
Okay.
Correct. It's related, right?
Correct.
There are CDEs that will be recommended by this work group that we won't necessarily use for the study. So they will work in parallel, and we might need to tweak some of those milestones to, make sure it's aligned correctly.
Right. The study CRFs will be a subset of work.
Just for everyone's sake, so that people on the call are not confused about this, what Brian is referring to is when we start collecting data as part of this big project, not part of the CDEs, from the 4 sites, ideally, again, in an ideal world, we would have waited until all of those CDEs are finished, and we would collect the data according to those CDEs, but that might not be possible from a timeline perspective, so things may not necessarily overlap 100% there. I would keep those separate from this and keep this as a completely sort of clean, independent effort.
So what are our next steps? And so I will send out the recording and slide deck from this meeting, just so if there, I know we kind of went through this very quickly, and so if there's anything that you all need a review, and then you have any questions, send my way. We will establish a standing meeting schedule. So what I'll do is I'll work with Dr. Mansour and the rest of the PIs to find a time. We know it's going to be real difficult to find a time that works for everybody, but we will find a time that's, that's more common that, we can kind of get more people on the call for. So I'll work on that. I do ask that, by...
Sorry, about the time. Are you going to plan 2 meetings for each one? Or are you just going to do 1?
It would just be 1 work group meeting per month.
Okay.
Yep, 1 work group meeting per month. And again, I'll record everything. The next date to keep in mind is by May 30th, in about 10 days, I'd like to have the work group members email me any additional studies for data elements to look at, because that, I say May 30th because that gives me a time where then I could, cut that off and just focus on knocking out the data elements and the frequencies to get that table out to this work group for review. And then by June, I will provide via email the frequency list of data elements commonly reported from studies and other data element sources. And then we will look again for the July 2025, we will be ready to launch round 1 of the Delphi survey. Any questions on that? Okay, Dr. Mansour, that's all I have, and I would like to end before we can open up for questions, but feel free to call and email me or anytime. I mean, I know this is going to be, there's going to be a lot of work going on. We'll do a lot of it via email and these monthly Zoom calls, but if there's anything in between where you need something, don't hesitate to reach out.
Thank you, Lizette. I just want to open it up to the group and see if anyone has any feedback, comments, please, anything that you think could make this effort more productive or robust. Similarly, if you think that there's someone who should be here and that we are obviously missing, please do speak up and let us know. We're happy to do that. If you prefer to do it privately, also please feel free to share an email and I'll make sure that they are invited. Nsini, please go ahead.
Yeah, I was thinking about having representation from NLM, the National Library of Medicine. I think since we're talking about having the CDEs endorsed, it would be good to have representation from them as well. So I will send a couple names to Lizette and maybe she can follow up.
Thank you very much.
Sure, I'll do that.
I'll just ask quickly. So some of us I know were involved with the 3rd version of the general head injury CDEs right now, because that's actively ongoing. I guess the question would be, there might be a more formal way to sort of partner up as opposed to sort of both projects getting to the end and then comparing. There might be a way to sort of do that in real time.
Excellent point, Greg. I was hoping that as we do this, to in real time actually communicate with the chairs of the different sections. And the current TBI CDEs, and actually having Nsini here is in part to achieve that. I don't have an idea as to how to do it more formally than that, but if you do, please let me know. I'm more than happy to consider that. Yes, in short, we would love to make sure that the efforts are done in parallel and communicated in parallel. As opposed to get to the end and sort of walk back.
Yeah. We might be able, and we can talk about this a little bit more, Dr. Mansour, but we might be able to, at the end of each round, you start seeing the data elements that meet inclusion, and we might be able to be sharing those real time.
And we can coordinate with Nsini who from the, TBI CDE group we should talk to, like Josh Manley and I don't know, David Mannon, and who else you think we should be reaching out to, but we'll make sure that we do that. Absolutely.
Okay, sounds good. All righty.
Any other thoughts or any other questions, concerns? Okay. I guess that's a good thing. So looking forward, everyone. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for getting on the call today.
Thank you.
I'll keep you updated. Have a great one.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Bye.